There's one I think sijui ilikuwa Regen ama ilikuwa wapi. Ilikuwa imefika 5th floor. Then ikaamua kupumzika hapo.
Can I mention something?
Yes.
Around 70% of the buildings within Nairobi and environment ziko questionable.
More than 70%.
Yes.
Now, just the other day, a familiar story happens. Another building has collapsed in Kahawa West.
Nimetoa tu vitu nikimaliza hivi na nyumba ikaporomoka.
Witnesses say the building showed signs of structural weaknesses days before the collapse.
Nyumba imeanguka. Why does this keep happening?
Mafundi wanataka pesa. So kuambia jenga,
watajenga.
Samu wanajuanga na wanajua tukifika 4th floor hapo siwezi kanyaga tena.
To help us make sense of this, we brought back on set one of our favorite guests on this platform, a design and build architect, Morris Kariuki.
We are designing to take care of the person occupying the place.
So unaweza nunua shamba but ilikuwa shimo.
And it is very common in those areas that had quarries.
Yes.
And then later were backfilled.
Alafu pia tuko na an esteemed structural engineer, Sam Wanyoike.
Anything that in a touch on the aesthetic will shake your house continually. That strap beam, maybe I can demonstrate with this. Huh?
Yes.
So it behaves like this.
For this episode, there are facts on construction that even I am shocked to learn zinakuanga.
The same kind of staircase you do at home is not the same staircase you do in a commercial building, and it's not the same staircase you do within a hospital.
I've seen even someone using water that looks like sewage.
So now ndio tusishtue watu, how clean should the water be ndio usipate mtu anakuongezea rent juu gorofa ilijengwa na maji ya kuchemsha.
Now a good engineer is one mwenye atakuja.
Kumbe this is one of those episodes we do because it's better to be safe than to be sorry.
Utashangaa sana kujua Mombasa hawajengi na maji ya ocean.
Actually 1% which is water affects 45% which is cement.
Morris, mtu akikusikia ukiongea you will be tempted to say afadhali niishi kwa gari.
I'm your host Dr. Kingori, and here's another reason to stay subscribed to our channel. Kama hauja subscribe, now is a good time to hit subscribe and turn on the notifications bell. Alafu pia like and share our content so that the good vibes can reach as many people as possible. Our conversation is happening at Wojo, a premium co-working space located in Upper Hill, Makiwa Hotel, ilikuwa formerly Crown Plaza. A premium co-working space inamaanisha they have the whole idea ya office for you. So when you need office space, when you have office needs, you don't have to go furnish space, you need address. They can give you all that with flexible contracts, and they have very, very beautiful packages that come with getting a space at Wojo. Endless supply of coffee, endless supply of printing material, super fast Wi-Fi, and very, very affordable rates. Consumer rate to the quality that you're getting.
Kuna ukisema tuseme kama sahi Kenya tunaona kulikuwa na hiyo approvals. Tuliongelea hiyo last time.
Yes.
Ya buildings. Kawaida mimi kwa the tallest buildings kama ni residential 12 floors, right? KICC 30. Sahi unasikia walikuwa wameapprove. Sijui ni 50 floors and above. But naambiwa kuna places kama Nakuru where hakunanga hizo skyscrapers. Right? Ni nini inafanya hiyo tuko na hiyo limit like what needs okay, umeisikia story ya Nakuru? Ati tuwezi enda kujenga Ayandem ama KICC Nakuru. Inakuanga ni kwa nini? The soil structure. So Nakuru hata iwai develop aje, there is no way watapita a certain threshold ya gorofa.
Given that the soil is so bad.
Yes.
There is what we call the bearing capacity. I think tuna record.
Tuko sawa
Okay.
Yeah.
There is what we call the bearing capacity. So bearing capacity ya soil ya Nakuru is less as compared to to some of these areas. Say for example, if I want to do a house, especially in Nairobi, these sides are Pangani, these sides are Isili.
Yes.
Kwenye kuna cotton. Ukifika a few meters down, you get rock. Some of these places in Nairobi, you'll get rock. But if you go to Nakuru, you have the volcanic soils. I mean, they they are a bit light
Okay.
and having a low bearing capacity. So that limits the height to which you will go. Otherwise, if you have to do this number of floors, then your foundation is going to be very expensive.
Now, does that mean there's a level that it doesn't matter the kind of soil? Let's say unataka kutengeneza mansion ya 1 floor, 2 floors, kuna mahali it doesn't matter the type of soil, wewe unaweza endelea. Hizo skyscrapers ndio kuna limit.
Yeah, because up to maybe ordinarily Kenya tumezoea kufanya for so many years.
Yes.
Tumezoea kufanya kama ni flats.
Yes.
We have been doing 4 or 5 floors.
Yes.
Right? So that can be accommodated by most of the soil, especially the loose soils in Nakuru.
Yes.
But when ukianza kufanya more than 10, 15 floors, more than those kind of floors, then the design of that kind of the foundation of that house will be so heavy until inakuwa very tricky to do that. I mean, too expensive. Very, very expensive.
Also, shida ya pesa ndio inafanyanga watu wanajilimit na how far you can go as in terms of development. Kuna mse kama uko na do na unataka kutengeneza skyscraper Nakuru, there is a remedy if you can afford it.
Yes.
Naangalia ile kitu ya first mover advantage. I'm assuming kama watu wa Nakuru hawajai na skyscraper huko, maybe if you think na hiyo old school mentality, like you will be the first person to put up the tallest building in Nakuru if you can afford it. That's a possibility.
It is not cost effective because you see, the moment you mention Nakuru, Nakuru is in Rift Valley, and you know the effects and the causes that made the place to be the way it is. The formation of those valleys, they are prone to also earthquakes, earth tremors, and sometimes when you dig so deep, you also get hot geysers. So there are some depths you can't go to. Then the type of rock around the area is sedimentary. Sedimentary is not like igneous. It is called igneous rocks. Igneous rock is very hard. We have mostly in these other areas, but in Nakuru specifically and the Rift Valley, ni ile imesukumwa na mvua, imesettle from the upper areas, and the soil is not very stable as the engineer is saying.
Yes.
It doesn't have that bearing capacity. So when you put up a skyscraper, it's very heavy. It might end up sinking. You know, there's a famous house at Zimmerman that sank.
Yes.
So the foundation, there are several types of foundations that can sustain that. Like the Burj Khalifa is built on a very loose, sandy soil in a desert. But when you look at the cost, how are the returns versus the construction cost? Because when you spend millions and the tens of millions on foundation to stabilize the ground, then
there's no point. Kama ni for business.
Like the foundation inakuwa ni expert kuliko nyumba yote. It doesn't make any economic sense.
And the main reasons people engage in those economic reasons.
Yeah, exactly. Because kama huko kuna ile grey sand, ile settled. Ukienda Nakuru pande za near the lake, kunaitwa
Bogoria?
No. Hiyo side ya lake tu ya Lake Nakuru, utapata there are so many quarries.
And Ashipai those sides.
Exactly. Hata hapa pipeline. Unapata kuna chimbwa that grey soil, ile sand inatumika kujenga na inaenda very deep, like even 30 meters. So hiyo mchanga huwezi ekelea. A heavy structure.
And then besides the cohesiveness of that soil, iko low. Such that even if you are to do things like piles, there's the cohesive friction. Because sometimes you can do a foundation that if on a weak soil using piles, na piles zina behave na zina get strength using the friction, such that ikifika a certain point, your friction ina hold that pile from
going any deeper.
Okay? But such soils unapata the cohesiveness yake iko ama the friction resistance iko low. Besides, he has also mentioned something to do with earthquake. Unajua those sides pia ziko earthquake prone, more earthquake prone than these sides of Nairobi.
So hizo ni factors zenye lazima uconsider.
You must, because
that is for sure.
A building is about stability. If it's not stable, Kengori, and you are seeing cracks running all the way from foundation to floor number 20, you don't want to be there.
So now, the main reason we are having this conversation, Leonie, both of you guys are very interesting insights kwa mambo ya construction. Na specifically, hata tukianza na wewe Engineer Sam, some of the areas wase cut corners na ziko na costs, unafikiri umesave cost na eventually you end up paying more. History ya maji chafu, hii kwa normal, like mbona utumie mineral water kujenga na maji tu ni ya mixing, right? You had something to say along the lines, it's not actually advisable kutumia maji chafu kujenga.
Yeah. You know, one of the reasons why people wanaweza go to those extent is because given that buildings see a cheap venture, they are looking at ways to save money. So if you give them an option that can help them to save money, inakuwa easy for them to buy that idea. And one of them nimeona new aspect ya you just tap water from wherever you are seeing it. And you are willing to, as long as it's a lot of water, it is enough to do my koroga, then you go and you tap it and you use it, even without doing tests to analyze what is contained inside. Unajua hiyo maji chafu, hata ingine I've seen even someone using water that looks like sewage. That was, I would call it sewage. I'm avoiding to make that ruling.
Yes.
But it was more or less sewage. So what happens is that we forget, or what we don't understand is maji si ya kufanya hiyo mixing ya ballast, the sand, na the cement ikuwe wet. It is not just about being wet.
Yes. There
is a chemical reaction that happens between water and cement called hydration. So hiyo chemical reaction inachukua the hydrogen, the oxygen from the water molecule, ina mix na the chemicals that are inside the cement.
Okay. That
forms now a compound yenye inakuwa sasa ni kama paste, which is glue to the concrete. So the moment umechukua maji chafu, which has some other chemicals, that water, those chemicals, they come and zina weaken that reaction kukua effective, such that some of those chemicals will react with the cement, so making the cement less reactive.
Okay.
Yes. So what it results to weakening the concrete, because that paste of water na cement is what strengthens the concrete.
Okay.
So as a matter of fact, umesikia vitu tunasema class 25, class 20, class 30. All that is influenced by the cement content.
Okay.
So ukikuwa maybe unafanya class 30 na unatumia maji ya sewage, uta end up na labda class 20 ama class 15.
Okay.
And it doesn't make sense.
Why? Maji peke yake.
Just because of that water. And by the way, you know one thing, Kingori, water constitute almost like 1% of the cost of concrete.
Okay. Cost of concrete ama cost of construction?
No, concrete.
Okay.
Kwa hiyo concrete, water, si ndo mbili tu.
Value ya maji ni 1%.
Ni kama 1%.
Yes.
In that, kwa hiyo siku ya koroga, hiyo koroga yenye mna mix pale hivi,
yes.
I mean, you just need like maybe for every maybe machine, you need like 2 buckets. And those 2 buckets, if you buy 5 shillings each, maybe because you are buying on a large scale, so that's only 10 bob. But in that, again, that same mix, you have 2 bags of cement, 2 full bags. And that's for, say, class 25 concrete. Now, 2 full bags is 1,600. So 10 bob inaribu 1,600.
It makes sense.
So actually, 1%, which is water, affects 45%, which is cement.
So now ndio tusishtue watu, how clean should the water be ndio usipate mtu anakuongezea rent juu hii ghorofa ilijengwa na maji ya kuchemsha? How clean should the water be?
Well, I think ordinarily ile maji tunapata kama ya Kanjo, it has a degree of being
Purity.
of purity, yeah?
Yes.
And somehow to some extent the borehole water wouldn't be termed that bad.
Yes.
But at least it has, I mean, you look at it, see, like this water here we are drinking, we haven't,
clear.
It's clear, right?
Yes.
It doesn't look like it has some minerals, but again, it doesn't have a smell. So hiyo maji, it is enough. Si lazima uende uchukue maji ya mineral, ama uende uboil maji ndio utumie nini. No.
Okay.
The effect that ordinary water from hii Kanjo inaweza fanya tu.
Okay.
Shida ni kuenda kutap maji ya barabara, imetoka kwa underground, umeichukua.
Na ya mvua?
Ya mvua pia iko sawa.
Iko sawa.
Yeah, that one is the best.
Morris, I'm sure naweza taka uadd kitu kwa hii chenye nani engineer Sam anasema. In this regard, kuna watu, yes, hiyo water inakam, but pia water inakuja kwa sijui kuspraying, curing, and I think I had someone, sijui kwa nini si nasahau attribution, I heard from someone that juu ya speed ya kumaliza, kuna processes watu cut corners kama sijui ya kumwagilia maji.
Yes.
How does this come about na how does it affect? What's the effect? Kuna zenye unaweza get away nazo?
It's a big serious effect. Sometimes it may not even happen immediately. You see, as the engineer is saying, once it reacts with the cement, and this is dirty water, it might be salty water, sometimes acidic. You know, there is these open drainages along the roads coming from farms, mostly flower farms. It has different types of fertilizers.
Yes.
Sometimes it's even ocean water. Utashangaa sana kujua Mombasa hawajengi na maji ya ocean.
What do you mean?
You struggle a lot to get water na ocean. It's just there. Because if you mix that, as he's saying, and the reaction goes otherwise, then, and you know most of the concrete that the engineers recommend, kuna ile wana recommend hizo classes 20, 30, whatever, kuna ya columns due to the compression forces, kuna za beams, na kuna ya slab, na kuna hata ya railings and balconies. So sometimes when you do that, and you see most of the time concrete is being poured, being reinforced with steel, ile chuma ya ndani.
Yes.
So when umekoroga na some water that is salty or acidic, it will also cause rust
Kwa chuma ndani.
kwa chuma ndani.
Okay.
And when the rust comes about, ina create gap huko ndani. And this gap expands. So utaona nini mingi Mombasa, column iko na crack
Kutoka juu mpaka chini.
kutoka juu mpaka chini, because now concrete haishiki chuma. Kuna ka gap kamekuwa created by the oxidation process. Oxidation hiyo just rust, si ati ni kitu ya nguvu sana. So most of the time you find that if you don't use the proper type of water, it might be clear as this one, but ikue acidic or salty.
Na hizi vitu zote mnasema, ule fundi wa mjengo, mtu wa mkono anajuanga hizi vitu.
Sasa that's why you need a qualified personnel on site, an engineer, QS, architect, and even if it's a clerk of works, cows, they are called cow. Na sio cow, unaweza interpret it.
Imagine
it will come out something different.
Okay.
So they should be instructed properly. The engineer must come to check his mixes. Na atabeba batch yenye inaenda test kwa laboratory, ikuwe compressed, they check all the composition and everything, na inapewa certificate. Ndio mnaweza pia kuendelea. And the engineers are informed. Juu kila mtu akona field yake, kuna engineer, kuna architect, kuna QS. So engineer anafaa kupeana instructions and all those details to confirm, because saa ile una jenga, you must also have storage tanks. He must also ascertain the source of this water and the type of water that is being used. Now, utaniuliza, na sasa na engineer hawezi shinda hapo whole day. That is where the clerk of works comes in. Yeye ndiye amefunzwa is a technician
kucheck hizi vitu zote,
kucheck, na akaambiwa, akapewa clear instructions kama hiyo maji haitoki pale isitumike before we check. So that one maintains the integrity. Otherwise ndio unaona saa ingine paint ina peel off, because nayo after it reacted with the cement and they dyed, they formed that load and the element like the walls and beams, na mtu wa mwisho naye anakuja anawekelea rangi.
Okay.
The paint comes with different types of components and elements, na sasa nazo pia zina react.
Na hii
so
advice
react, inaanza kufura, alafu rangi unaona
ikitoka
inaanza kumwagika in form of dust ama ina peel off.
Na hii advice ni ya watu tu wa magorofa ama mtu mwenye pia mtu mwenye pia anajenga tuka nyumba yake, they also need to have clerk of works, QS, engineer on ground. From what level do we start?
You can't underestimate any, because even if it's just one window and it has those effects and this dust kama ile tuliongea last time inaku affect, because hii dust pia ina drop na inakuwa blown within the house, you are also breathing it. And it might have hizo chemicals, itaenda ku react with the lungs. They will react with your blood, utapata hata nini blood infections. So it's very critical, you must.
Okay.
And since it has been used for a long time within a certain area, watu wameshajua that information. Utapata watu wengi wa coast hawatumii steel locally, wanatumia tu miti, matope and they are okay na makuti.
Ndio nilikuwa nimekuuliza Engineer Sam, kama kwa reinforcement na integrity of a structure ni lazima mtu atumie chuma.
Well, the chuma here unamaanisha hizi za kusimamisha nyumba.
Reinforcement bars.
Can you avoid
reinforcement bars? Hardly, unless unajenga nyumba, na hata nyumba ya mabati, na hiyo mabati pia iko na kachuma element.
Yes.
So hardly will you avoid unless unajenga purely nyumba ya mbao, and especially kama ni nyumba ya gorofa. Either unatumia steel itself kama steel structure, hizo tubes na nini, that is steel, hiyo bado ni chuma. Uko ndani reinforcement bars bado unahitaji, especially the slab and all that. So most of the time utapata chuma is a common thing in construction. In fact, chuma na kokoto, more than 80% of the houses zina contain chuma na kokoto.
Okay.
Yeah.
Reinforced concrete. Yeah.
Okay.
And maybe just to visit your swali yenye umesema about even for a small house. You know mtu anapojenga kanyumba yake kadogo, you are looking at how do I save? And what makes someone be enticed to work with only the foreman? Ni kwa sababu foreman huwa anajua effectiveness yake ni vile atakusavia pesa.
Yes.
Irregardless of integrity. Foreman anatumia tu their level of experience. Ile wanasema tunajenganga hivi, na nimejenga mingi, nimefanya mingi. Huku hivi nimefanya kama 10. So they use that and then they try to convince you to use. So kuna mwingine alikuwa ananiambia that you can do let's say hollow pot. And unaweka hollow pot tunaweka chuma. So unaweka chuma 2 kwa one pot, unaruka pot 3, unaweka another set of chuma, unaruka zingine. You see to me that one I even asked, can you give me a write up that can convince me about what you are saying? So it is
inamaanisha kuna nyumba they've built like that. There are houses that have actually been constructed na hizo cutting corners.
Yes. There's a report that was released by one of the authorities in Kenya some time back, and it was saying that more than 50%, I think more than around 70% of the buildings within Nairobi and environment ziko questionable.
More than 70%.
Yes.
Does this mean on a level of bureaucracy, 70% of people who live in Nairobi, for example, are at risk presently?
Okay, the 70% has also been broken down. Out of that 70, there is a small percentage that says that this building should be condemned should be destroyed.
Demolition, yes.
Yeah.
So hiyo inamaanisha inafaa ibomolewe.
Inafaa ibomolewe.
Immediately.
There are others which are saying that they need to be repaired. There are others that are saying that they missed one or two, but they can be given a few touches. So the other 30% that makes now the 100 is what was said that this one meets the right standard. So you see, bado nyumba inaweza kuwa imesimama, lakini bado it doesn't meet the right standard.
Hiyo ni moja. Unaona, Morris is very big on regulation. Kuna regulation in terms of serikali inataka tu watu walipe do waende through your process, na kuna ile ya by the ukweli hii kitu iko hapa to protect you from XYZ.
Yes.
So which one is it? Like hii 70%, wewe kama engineer unasema ikiwa risk, how much of a risk are we talking about? Like kama building, unaona hii kuanguka inakuanga once in a while.
Yes.
Right? Na nile wame cut corners sana. How risky is hii 70%?
Say around 5 to 10% ndio iko at that
Extreme risk.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Na Morris alikuwa anasema when you finish construction, there is certain things. Approval ni before and after.
Yeah, ni before and after. And maybe just to add on what the engineer said,
yes,
there's a very serious nitakuonyesha. Look at this. I'll send you the photos, maybe you can attach.
Yeah.
Watu wameamua fanye slab ya mawe na wekele wire mesh. So the day they remove this formwork from below, because hata chuma haishiki mawe, it will just sink.
Okay.
Zitaanguka tu. So some of them, kama hizo zina fall under that serious category, they are lucky zimejengwa katikati ya two strong buildings. Kako hapo kama nini weak.
But so ni kama gorofa iko na crutches. Yes.
Kama shikiliwa na hizo nyumba mbili. But something happens, like a serious earthquake or whatever, they will all go down. Na ndio unaonaga nyumba zingine zinaanguka na inaacha the neighboring house.
Yes.
Imesimama tu ama ina lean on it. There's one I think sijui ilikuwa Rege na ama ilikuwa wapi. Ilikuwa imefika 5th floor. Then
ikaamua kujishikilia na gorofa nyingine.
Can I mention something?
Yes.
Something that when people are doing flats, huwa they don't foresee or they don't, if at all they are not using someone like an engineer, they might easily miss out, which is a very, very critical item. Unaona vile saizi umenunua kaplot kadogo. And so umejipata that one of your sides hiyo ndio utajenga hiyo nyumba yako, so unaanzia karibu kwa boundary on one end, ndio at least wache parking hii side nyingine. So ukianzia pale kwa boundary, when you are doing a building on a boundary, so zile pillars zako zenye zina support hiyo nyumba ziko at the edge, so utapata kwa sababu huwezi extend to the neighbor, ile support yake ile stool pale penye inalalia hiyo column, it's what we call the base, iko off, it's not centered on the column. So there is what we call a strap beam. So unapata watu wengi huwa haweki kitu kama hako. That strap beam, maybe I can demonstrate with this.
Yes.
So it behaves like this. This is your pillar and this is your base. So if your pillar inaleta pressure downwards, exert pressure downwards, it tends to lift this base like that. Okay? So if I have a series of pillars, kumaanisha hii base itainuka, na ikiinuka, the more inainuka because ndio inachukua hiyo pressure yote, inachukua hiyo weight yote, ikiinuka, then the part that is remaining subjected to the ground is small. So inaanza kusink. So unapata hii line ya manyumba, that line imesink. Ikisink ni kumaanisha ingine itabend.
hivyo ndio zinazanga kusink.
Yes.
Na there's a concern yenye I shared with both of you. Ya siku hizi there's something watu wanasema planning. Like sai mtu anakuja anaeka gorofa where sema 1,000 people can live.
Yes.
In terms of the resources kama maji have not been factored in. Right? So they come up with a solution. They dig boreholes. Apparently, credits to a guy anaitwa Shad Khalif on Twitter. Niliona amepost kitu anasema ati hii maji yenye watu wanatoa kwa ground to satisfy the demand ya housing ina interfere na integrity ya stability ya ground. Would you please break it down for us from your perspective, alafu utatuambia in terms of the net effect ya structures za manyumba?
Sure enough. And most of the times you've seen in those cities that developed earlier than us.
Yes.
You see, we are always behind. So we have very nice case studies out there. We are not doing anything very new. The effects have already been felt elsewhere.
Okay.
You see, when you sink a borehole, unachota maji from like 200 feet. There is that space that was occupied by this water percolating from the rain, from other sources, and many other sources. When you remove that water and it is consumed in the house, then from the house, the wastewater or soiled water will go direct to the sewer line. So it's not falling back into the same ground. So hapa tunatoa ikiendaga.
Yes.
And after some time, quite a long time, when you exhaust this water, because the rate of removing is higher than the rate of percolation from the rains and the rivers and flooding, then you are left with voids. Huku ndani sasa kunakuwa na void, and we are still building. We are still developing. We are still raising the heights.
Yes.
Skyscrapers are still coming. So at one point, it will settle. When there are things like tremors, earthquakes, such things. There are several other causes that can cause sinkholes. Even acidic rains and water, they percolate and react with the lime. Ile ilikuwa inaitwa karst scenery in geography. Those are other causes. But this one is very serious because unaweza pita kama hapa asubuhi and then there happens imesettle mara moja. So ground ina sink. Inaitwa sasa sinkhole na inaweza meza building mzima, even a road.
And that's a likelihood.
That's a likelihood. In fact, that one I can say most of the time it's guaranteed over a period
of time,
long period of time. And that's why these regulations don't need to be politicized. They need to be research based.
Okay.
Because if you come with your maybe stolen money and you have a lot and no one can stop you, you can even overturn the county regulations. Place kama Nakuru, na wewe ujui what is underground. Mafundi wanataka pesa, so ukiwaambia jenga,
watajenga.
They just build. Maybe sometimes some wanajuanga na wanajua tukifika 4th floor hapo siwezi kanyaga tena.
Nataka kukuuliza
it will sink.
Nataka wanajua
wanaondokea, then you go get some others from other areas who are not even aware.
Nataka kukuuliza swali on Narok specifically, especially kuna time Narok walikuwa wanapasua kwanza Narok iko na hiyo tabia. Mnaweza kuwa mnakula sapa hivi alafu mnagawana, watu wanaenda huko na nyinyi mnabaki huko. Nakuuliza. But then Engineer Sam, there is an observation. Nowadays in terms of saving space, wachana na underground parking. That's another conversation. Kuna kitu ya watu wanatengeneza hizo water tanks, underground water tanks. Alafu hizo underground water tanks kwa flats, they also come, sasa now you park on top of them.
Yeah.
Right? So there's a parking, alafu chini ni either septic tank ama
underground tank.
Ama underground tank. How safe is this, ama how do people ensure that this calculation is safe long term?
Well, for me as a person, I usually find an underground water tank better than doing that tank at the top.
But see, I think the tank at the top people put ndio maji iko inateremka
Gravity.
Yes, you will still need that tank at the top, but unaona ukikuwa na less capacity down here, then it means that you'll have to increase a lot of capacity. So the tops, zile tanks utakuwa nazo at the top will be more of to distribute. So they have a short term of storing that water, but the underground tank is the one that inaku hold ya maji, so that in case the whole area hakuna maji, you still have
a big reservoir.
You still have a big reservoir. But the tanks that are at the top, they should be able to run you for a time in case you don't have steamer.
But I think the tank at the bottom ndio inahitaji kupampiwa maji iende juu.
Ndio nasema, so that tank at the top,
yes,
is a reservoir to run you. I mean, you do the math not based on the neighborhood supply. You base it on, in case there is no electricity, how much water do I need to store here? So maybe that could be like a day, 2 days, or 3 days. But the underground reservoir should be able to take you for more days, because that is dependent on the water supply around there.
So you're saying hii tank ya juu, most people build because you can't trust Kenya Power.
Well, not really. It's because
yes,
it is very expensive to pump water into the house directly. I mean,
sawa. Na hujatuambia why the underground tank is better than the hiyo ya kusimama juu, yet I think this other one is scary.
I don't think it's scary, because the slab, that slab and the pillars, they have been, if you get a good design, they are able to resist that load
long term,
for a long time. Yes.
Najua I asked that why. Kwa nini? Because I've heard that hata swimming pool peke yake watu wachache sana wanaweza tengeneza a swimming pool na integrity yenye either haita sink, haita sip water nini, vitu kama hizo.
Yes.
So now inaitwaje, an underground water tank is basically a swimming pool yenye iko na kifuniko.
Yes.
So how do you maintain the integrity and nini?
I think you are talking in terms of avoiding leakages. Right?
Na pia kwa flats zenye people build now, umebuild but umetengeneza parking on top. Do you factor in hiyo weight ya kukuja na kurudi in the long term?
Yes, that is factored. And as a matter of fact, hiyo tank, hiyo maji is resting on a firm ground. Okay. So the slab yenye iko on top hailali hiyo maji.
It's independent.
It is very independent. In fact, there's a gap between that slab and the water. The water is not allowed to go to the top kabisa. I mean, there's a level yenye unasema iko full. Okay. So there's like a small allowance.
Okay.
Now, when it comes to waterproofing, there are various methods that you need to do waterproofing. And somehow concrete is good. Najua mimi huwa una advocate watu tufanye na concrete. Because one, concrete ina ensure the structure is firm. Na hiyo maji, unajua pia maji inakuwa na pressure yake ndani. So concrete inaweza resist that pressure.
Okay.
But mawe, sometimes they can easily give in. The joints between hizo mawe become weak points where water is able to seep through. Okay. So you need more effort. Of course, you would say that it is cheaper to do na mawe, but concrete is more long term.
Okay.
And it is easier to waterproof na kuwe na kitu firm.
Okay.
Yes.
Sawa. Morris, mtu akikusikia ukiongea you will be tempted to say afadhali niishi kwa gari, because you also have a lot to say about stairs, and I couldn't wait for us to have this conversation.
Yes.
Ati there is also a science. Make mental note ya story nisema nitakuuliza ya Narok.
Yes.
You also say that stairs vile sisi upanda. Break that down for us.
Yeah, stairs is a very critical part of the development.
Yes.
Residential, be it commercial, be it hospital. They all matter a lot. Because the same kind of staircase you do at home is not the same staircase you do in a commercial building, and it's not the same staircase you do within a hospital. Kingori, I'm sure you've maybe visited a hospital and you realize they have trend. Trend ni
Hiyo space ya kanyanga.
Mostly you design it basing your trends on the human foot. So when you are designing, someone who is strong doesn't require all that space. Who is in good health and is strong enough, wanaweza kanyaga on our bounds waende. That one you can do a smaller trend. Yeah, like
that's a measure of strength. Mali unakanyagia stairs.
Yes, because kama ukikanyaga hivyo you have to show uwe unakanyaga na hapa.
Kwa hivyo ukipanda stairs nini unaweza kuwa wewe unaenda.
Kama kuna stairs zingine una tiptoe. Because iko na very small trend unangangana mpaka ukifika juu unasikia sikwembe.
Yes.
So if you live in such a house, umeunga sana ni kama gym. But when you go to a hospital, a weakling, a sick person cannot do such a thing.
Lazima upande stairs mpaka
usettle, unakanyaga. So kiatu yote iko ndani ya
stairs.
Hiyo trend. Na raiser ni kadogo like 4 inches, like 150 millimeters.
Yes.
Not more than. Residential you can do even 167, 170. But in a hospital where you have weak people, sick, old, elderly, and they are walking slowly, sometimes you want to lean and relax. So the staircase in this case will be very wide to allow other people to pass when you are relaxing.
Yes.
And others are going up. It will be like 1.8 meters wide minimum, because kuna zile pia bed. Unaweza kuwa umebebwa na they have more landing spaces. Na kuna zingine commercial like in town unaona iko na flight ya 18 steps. Ni kama marathon. Ukiwa hapa chini mpaka you get discouraged.
Afadhali hata wakuvurute na kamba.
Utupe kamba. Ni kama mountain climbing.
Yes.
So there are those kama hiyo utapata ukiweka hospitali, it won't function. Ni stairs yenye unapanda mpaka inakuvunja backbone.
In fact, I remember when you first brought that story up, ulisema tuseme a stairs like that one inaweza kuletea shida za magoti,
backbone. Unaona sasa, na backbone is very critical in your life. Ukishavunja bwana.
So stairs inaweza kukuvunja not because umeanguka, but because you use it frequently.
Hapo na inakuwa stress kubwa sana kwa mwili.
Haiko
balanced. Then kuna ile psychologically you are set as a human, kuna rhythm ya kutembea pia. You don't just walk. That's why you will notice kuna steps zingine utapanda and then you feel like
there is something missing.
Kuna something that has been missing. Juu umezoea 1 2 3. Hiyo ndio rhythm. 1 2 3. So if you do 1 2, there is something incomplete. Okay, ukiishi na hiyo nyumba utazoea psychologically. You'll be wired to.
But ukienda mahali kuna rhythm.
Ukienda sasa kuna professional done work, you will feel it. Na utafeel hiyo stairs sijachoka.
So does it mean stairs hizi zenye tunaonanga hivi, it is not in proportion to the size of the house.
Apana.
There is a definite number yenye unafaa kuweka.
Na watu wengi sana wamevunjika miguu hii joint because of that. Because sasa unakanyaga like kama dining to kitchen to sitting room, sunken lounges, umeweka steps 2. Na ile rhythm yako it's natural. So ukiita wageni juu hao hawajazoea, wewe ulianguka mpaka ukazoea. Mwenye nyumba. Wageni wakikuja wote
wanaanguka.
So unakanyaga 1 2, then you are going to the
something
one
is missing.
Something unakanyaga kwa nguvu sana because you are prepared to go deeper
to another.
Sasa hii imeishia hapa.
And it's natural instinct.
Unagonga chini.
Okay.
And maybe most of the other places you've been, they are done well. So akili yako inakuwaga inajua tunaendaga 1 2, then on the proper ground. So if you are not able to configure those, hata watoto wataumia sana kwa nyumba.
But there are people who hata naturally hawaendangi stair step by step, you skip
Wanaruka.
some.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because you like when one is young, unakuja unaangalia hizi ni 15, naruka 3. You tune yourself to that. You've already done it, you've seen it, you've analyzed it, and you've programmed yourself to do that. That one you can manage because you are controlling it yourself. But where you are used, kama sasa ni kutoka tu kitchen, your reflex action, whatever, unaenda unatokwa.
Okay.
So mgeni akikuja, that's why you feel that kuna wengine wanakujanga amezoea kukaa mahali kwake kuko sawa, but akitembea kwa rafiki yake akirudi unasikia
anaumwa na mgongo. The effect is that immediate.
It is because it is muscles. You are stretching muscles that have not been used to that kind of work.
Okay.
Ni kama vile hujazoea kuinua mawe and then one day the following day you feel it. Ama unafanya roller ile ya 6 pack. The following day hata huwezi taka kusikia jokes.
Utasikia hiyo effect.
Yes.
And when it comes to design, I think tumeongea hiki tuna engineer Sam ya ati architects wao nightmare ya engineers in terms of the ideas that you guys bring.
Yes, we are.
Are you allowed to change things zenye architect amechora, ama as an engineer wewe ukiletewa stairs inafaa ikuwe around na ingie hapa, you have to work your way around?
When an architect amekam na concept.
Yes.
And ameuzia, it's like an idea.
Yes.
So hiyo idea anashare na mwenye nyumba. So the owner of that building, when they have bought that idea, they want to run with it.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
So they have said that, yes, this is what I want. And so they own it themselves. So unaona sasa, umeniambia, hebu nisaidie kuimplement hii idea. So what will happen ni ati we usually check whether this idea it has some structural sense, I would say. Usiweke nyumba yenye inakaa imehang. You get? Such that he has support. But I know a good number of architects, especially those who have wamefanya practice for a considerable amount of time,
they factor in
all those possibilities. So what happens is that now a good engineer is one mwenye atakuja by that concept hata yeye mwenyewe, and then tries to maintain, because you need to understand what is this that the client, the developer wants to achieve, so that I support that. So you're coming to support that vision to make it practical. That ideal yenye imetengenezwa is what you are making now a reality. Employing all tools possible. So if it's, unless you have explored all alternatives na unaona haiwezi work, ama what can work is introducing another complicated aspect to the overall outlook, such that sasa itabidi mume compromise and to some extent, but that is not you imposing anything that in a touch on the aesthetic. Inakuwa very important, muna work closely
as a team.
A team.
Okay.
Yeah. So
okay.
I think it's just a matter of coordination. But if at all the architect has thought through the structure, then I believe it is something that can be supported.
Okay.
Yeah.
Before tufunge, have you ever found yourself dropping a construction project because ya kitu kama the soil will not support the building? In this case, nataka kujua, is it encouraged to do soil testing or soil research before you invest in construction?
It's very critical. That is in the inception stage, because when you are given a site and you observe something different from the normal sites that you are used to, it's very important to get the engineers. Engineers there are several
different types.
Different types, I don't want to say types of engineers, categories. Kuna wenye watakuja wafanye test pit, wachimbe a pit maybe 2 or 3 in different locations, ndio aweze kutua device kama hiyo nyumba itasimama hapo, na kama it requires a different special kind of, basically it's called the feasibility studies, to establish whether the project will take off or not, and if it won't, then we can recommend another site before you waste your cash, because it might be. There's a very nice example at Kasarani and these areas of Zimmerman. Initially, when the Wazungus were here, the colonial guys, those were the quarries. Walichimba mawe wakatoa, ikatumika, they did everything, then they backfilled. Hao nayo wenye walikuja kujenga barabara, walitupa hiyo matope huko.
Umesema Kasarani?
In Zimmerman.
Okay.
So, hizi quarry zimejazwa. Very common in Kitengela also. Wanachimba mawe, and since locally you know the ground is firm, kuna mawe chini, but when you buy the plot, unakuja kurealize it was backfilled with the cotton soils, ikafanywa leveling, and the trees were planted. So wewe ukinunua plot unaona?
That's a possibility.
It is, it happens. In fact, we had to drop a project at Zimmerman because tulichimba, and we realized the owner cannot finance that because the bank finance ya mortgage yenye alikuwa amequalify for, it would double, and the bank will not. So when we went to set out and excavate for foundations, ilienda 10 feet, no firm ground yet. Different types of soil. Kuna cotton, kuna maram, kuna mawe, kuna red soil. So it was a dumping site.
So unaweza nunua shamba but ilikuwa shimo.
Ilikuwa shimo kubwa sana. And it is very common in those areas that had quarries.
Yes.
And then later were backfilled. So if you go, you take your engineer to design for you the foundation, because most of the foundations we recommend that they are determined on site.
Okay.
So engineer kuja ku recommend depth.
Yes.
Munapata cotton soil. Mukichimba chimba kidogo
pata maram.
Mukichimba chimba kidogo red soil. Then this time you have to drop everything else and investigate the ground properly, so that you can also ask the QS now the cost, the effect on cost, and you might realize ile nyumba ulikuwa unafikiria umechukua mortgage ya 8 million,
yes,
it will end up requiring 16-20 or even more, because you now have to excavate out all this unknown type of soils.
Wende uko ukweji
ndio uende sasa ulay good foundation, you backfill properly, ndio nyumba i take off. You will have spent all your money, ile ilikuwa ya nyumba, you've like buried a whole house underground.
It's very important even before you buy a piece of land, ujue ni wapi unanunua, because and even what you want to do. Unaona place kama hiyo that has cotton nama imekuwa na backfill,
yes,
could be going up to maybe 15-20 feet before upate rock. Because a good number of places within Nairobi and these sides of Thika Road,
especially at Juja, Darugo,
Juja, Kenyatta Road, they were quarry because they wanted either rock, maram. So wanatoa hiyo maram, wana backfill cotton, inakuwa dumping ya cotton, maybe imetolewa somewhere along Mombasa Road, imedampiwa pale. Then once enough has been excavated of the gold, na dumping imefanywa pale, then the plot is sold broti makuta. You know?
Yeah.
So you find that the piece of land is being sold at a very cheap rate because it has been drained off. So you can, if you want to do a structure, it will be very expensive, especially if you are doing a small house. What I usually say is, if you say, for example, you have red soil. Red soil ni mzuri sana when you're doing a small house and a small flat. Red soil is very good. Maram is very good for even a flat.
Yes.
I mean, an apartment. up to say around 10 floors. Maram is good. Rock would be good, especially for apartments. But for a small house, kutakuwa na hiyo excavation cost, which will be, which will make the cost go high.
A bit high.
For cotton, also depends with the depth. Ukiwa na cotton, the best kufanya pale hivi ni apartment. Because like for that one, you can easily do some 2 basements. Yeah, parking.
Now,
So,
I think
which will compensate for,
yes.
for that.
For cotton.
Yes, for black cotton.
Oh, so ukisha chimba, you use that space ya yenye umechimba for kama parking.
Yes, like
Instead of backfilling,
Yes.
you utilize it as a parking, because either way column lazima ikanyage
Chini.
kwa rock.
kwa rock.
Chini.
So
Yeah.
badala ya kufanya columns and then you backfill like a meter,
Yes.
you can utilize it as
Parking.
basement parking.
There's a house doing in Karen.
Even parklands.
In Karen, you find that you had to go 5 meters to be able to get a stable ground.
Stable ground.
And you are just doing a simple house here, 1-2 floors.
Kuna
Floor and,
the
so that
proprietor
becomes
wa,
very expensive.
the proprietor wa Double M buses, I believe, built a hotel next to the airport, and I think she got in trouble because inasemekana either there's a process they missed such that ikaanza kukuwa na cracks after imesha kuwa completed, and I believe it was built on a wetland. Na ukienda Limuru, ukiwa Yakiwe, wakati on your right there is Limuru, there's a very big swamp up.
Imekuwa backfilled.
Hiyo ni backfilling.
Sasa imejazwa soil excavated elsewhere.
Yes.
Saa hii imeshajazwa.
Okay.
There is no longer that swamp. It was like a small lake. Saa hii wameshajaza. And mostly you find that even along Kiambu Road.
Yes, hapa river nitwaje?
Yes, so you see kama pale Four Ways Junction.
4 ways.
They will backfill that and since they know zitatumika tu kama car bazaars, hazina strong structures. Ni
So
mahali
you
tu
say
pamekuwa leveled, you can do a certain type of development yenye haina weight kubwa, but if you put a house without knowing, it will settle. The houses usually settle after some time, na ikisettle unevenly, then it will develop cracks because hii imeenda chini imeachwa juu. But if you just use it for maybe a church, a car bazaar, something like a small market, it might function. But later in life, mtu anaweza kuja na umang'aa yake na hajui what had happened
na ajenge
na aanze kujenga nyumba.
So you also have to know the history of the place.
You have to.
Yes, yes.
You have to. And if you don't get the history, you must bring the engineers
And that soil
to do the soil test.
You know, your backfill in as a whole maji. It's unlike a consolidated rock or soil. Hiyo imesha shikana, so it can only allow a certain amount of water. But now this one is uncompressed. Ni kujazwa tu imejazwa. So it acts like a basin that is holding water. So you come
It's
and
loose.
you build on it. You are like building on an unstable. You are building on an unstable ground.
Is it possible to dig a house into the hill na ikuwe na integrity? Like, no, as in,
Like a cave.
like a cave, but then you furnish it nicely. Is it possible? Is it?
Maybe a single 10 by 10.
Si utaenda uipatisha
Without
huko ndani.
partitions.
You may not. Well, on the ideal you can. On the ideal you can, especially if you are able to hold, and then the rock structure.
And the
Because
type of rock also.
yeah, the more
hill-
strong the rock is, the more harder it will be for you, but the more stable that house will be. But if at all you have a rock that has weathered, then kumaanisha your rock within a short time ni rahisi kuvunjika, and any movement that's happening at the top of the hill
Yes.
will shake your house continually. But
And
it
the
is possible.
vibrations in the neighborhood.
Yes.
Kama kuna reli inapita hapo,
Yeah.
malori.
And there are those tunnels that have been done as a railway and what have you, and they have been properly supported.
Yes.
Okay.
Those tunnels. So you also need to do some form of support.
Okay.
But remember the cost of kuchimbia hiyo nyumba ndani.
It's also not small.
It's not quite a small amount.
You are thinking in terms of unaweza chimba huko ndani uweke tu mlango.
Na uweke stima.
Not unless ni ka 10 by 10, kale karoom kadogo tu kenye unaingia pale. But if you at all you want to do such a maybe a 2 bedroom with rooms, then it means that there is more work.
But can you do modifications on a naturally occurring cave? Kama in Karura they have a cave.
Yes.
So ukienda upate mahali kuna cave fulani watu wako wamegundua bado, and then you buy the place, alafu useme unataka
utilize it.
You just call the interior designer.
Yes.
Is that practical ama hapo sasa ndio inaweza amua inaweza teremka na wewe?
And well, of course, by the time you are buying, you have also assessed the history of that cave. Number 2, you have assessed how the rocks look like, and besides, you are going to reinforce
again
some of
the cave has been occurring naturally. Ama hapo ndio itasikia he was buried in his home.
Yes, but you see it's not guaranteed. You see like this route of Mai Mahiu. There are stones that have been there for the longest. There are some also parts of Meru where you go and you find a board saying falling, be careful, falling rocks. They've been there naturally, but due to some other effects or vibrations after a long period of time, the rains and everything, mudslides, those things you must now, you know, when we are designing to take care of the person occupying the place. So we must be able to foretell, even if it's not falling now, if an earthquake occurs, if tremors occurs, if flooding occurs, if there are vibrations around the area, we must cover this ground with our technique.
Yes.
Like you put a roof inside so that it is reinforced all the way out.
Okay.
Because it might occur that there might be a mudslide somewhere na ikuje pia ifunike pale nje. The cave is still intact. But you see, you can't get out now.
And besides,
and there are several structures like the railways in Europe, there are underpasses, there are also roads under the sea. So you must enforce.
Yeah, I'm saying for a properly done house, there are several considerations that are made. One is the ventilation and also lighting. So that cave might miss out on the lighting aspect because it is depending on that entrance. Haina madirisha
yes,
imechimbia. And then besides, if it is if you dig much deeper, then the issue to do with air circulation and again temperatures might be on the extreme because some of these caves unapata inakuwa na joto sana na hakuna hewa.
Na si watu wanatengeneza doomsday bunkers.
Yeah.
People make doomsday bunkers na they manage to kutengeneza ventilation vizuri. There's I think
but do they live there or it's the money?
Do they live there? There's a village, if you check, I think we can put up the link hapa chini ya YouTube video. I'll go look it up. Ya an area where walikuwa wamejenga underground wakiogopa dunia ilikuwa inaenda kuisha. And they are very nice ninis huko chini.
I've seen it.
Yes.
And they have employed different techniques and channels, but there are some other places zimetoka nje. So they are getting circulation of air
from outside.
Yes. And then you must also provide light. In this case, artificial, because you can't perforate windows through the rock.
So hiyo pipe, hiyo mtu akitaka kukumaliza si hiyo pipe umetoa ndio anakuja tu
anafunika.
And you're done.
Yes, like that one, I think I've also seen it. It was used during the Second World War.
Yes.
They would hide and have different channels. So nyi mnaruka, you proceed all the way down, but wao wanajua kuna ka diversion somewhere in the middle, and then they go all the way in kilometers. And there are places that we have also restaurants in such areas. Even in China, initially, before the discovery of these developments, they were living in caves. Walikuwa wanaishi kwa mashimo. So they have those effects juu kama ni wakati wa floods and something happens and water accesses through one of the holes. itajaza huko ndani and you are doomed.
Yeah.
But for the bunkers,
yes,
they are made with all the provisions like oxygen, whatever. They have all those breathers,
Yes.
and for a certain period of time. See at permanent.
Yes.
yeah.
So in as much
Maybe
it
for
is
a month
doable,
or weeks. Ile
in as
itakusaidia.
much is doable,
Yes.
there are so many considerations that
Yes.
you may need to work through.
Okay.
In fact, even safety, your own safety. You only have one exit in that cave.
Yes.
So in case there is a fire, mwasha kiberiti vibaya, then
It will also consume the oxygen. It will suffocate you.
you'll
You'll
so
be
what
doomed.
you said, you said what? Alilala ama he died in his own home.
Oh, he was buried in his home.
Buried
He
in
buried
his own-
himself.
Yeah.
Wow,
Yeah.
okay.
So there is a house needs to be. There are so many considerations, as I said, that needs to be checked, so that you ensure that a house is hospitable. It's functional. It meets the major criteria. It's not just putting walls and what have you.
Okay.
It has so various aspects that need to be looked into, so that it can serve you well. He talked about
It
the
must
staircase.
be functional.
He talked about the staircase, and I was looking at it as I was hearing. I could remember a house that was done with some risers that were so huge, 200. By the time unafika juu umechoka,
You're very
and it's only
tired.
one floor. You know, it's like you're climbing up a hill. There is a gentleness that needs to be allowed. He talked about like a foot and half a foot down, 4 to 6 inches. So all those considerations, they help to make that house comfortable for you to live in.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Asanteni sana.
Maybe
Wadau
before
wetu.
you close,
Yes.
we can mention this.
Yes.
To conclude all that, there are bylaws that are put in place so that once everything has been done,
Yes.
then you must go back to the county authority or government authorities to come and inspect the house before you occupy to ensure that it is good for human consumption.
Occupancy.
Because if you like, you remember what we discussed last time, like the aeration and lighting and so on. If you live in such a house and you are not aware, or there are no fire extinguishers, there are no fire exits, like when I look around, you can see they are very well
Yes.
indicated.
Yes.
They must be provided, because you remember like the fire we had with the supermarket, was it Nakumat or something?
Nakumat downtown.
Yes. If you don't have those exits and properly indicated for
Yes.
people to see and be able to access, then people might die in the same place
Okay.
of some avoidable circumstances.
Yes.
Because we have another very bad, terrible culture. Kama sasa hiyo staircase ya fire, unapata most of the time it's empty, it's not used, it has not been even washed. Na mtu naye kwa apartments anafikiria hizi vitanda zimejaa huku, tunaweza tupa pale
Kwa stairs.
Kwa stairs.
juu haitumikangi.
Emergency.
So that emergency exit is
People don't
closed.
pay close attention to that.
Yes. So people need to do that, and they keep on checking. That is the business of the building owner to alleviate those risks, because you can also be charged for them. That is risking and maybe committing, attempting suicide.
Many people, many Kenyans, they interact. I know they interact with the finishes of a house, but I find it not so good or bad manners to do such a decoration like tiling on a badly done slab, a badly done floor. Ulikoroga na maji mbaya, ulitumia mchanga mbaya, ama ulimfanya mixing vibaya. You know, ingine hata inakuanga ni kaa supu. There is a good ratio of concrete that needs to be done so that you're able to ensure that your concrete is strong to hold that floor. So unapata the tiles zinaanza kutoka toka, slab inaanza kukua na cracks. There is what we call vibration sagging happening. You find the slab is sagging, and you know the repair, the repairs that the cost of repairing the structure is more than just the finishes, because for the finishes,
Yes.
kitu kama tile utaondoa tu your part.
Yes.
But for the slab, it involves a lot, because once a slab begins to fail, you don't attend to only that particular place. It's the whole panel of that slab. So it is quite expensive to repair structural item as compared to the finishes. But we usually give a lot of attention. Unapata umetumia hiyo maji mbaya, mixing mbaya, but when you go to buy the laminate, which are not that cheap as the normal tiles,
Yes.
you are willing to pay the price for that. So it is just about getting to having things done in the right perspective.
Okay. Asanteni sana. Wale watu waona namba ya Morris, wale watu waona namba ya Morris iko hapa down, namba ya engineer Sami Wanyoike pia iko hapo chini. Angalia kwa description ya hii video. In case you wanna get in touch with a structural engineer, namba iko hapo. Morris is a design and build architect, Rax Company Limited. If you follow our content, you are familiar with the company. Both of them, very good vibes. Otherwise, asanteni sana.
Thank you very much, Bwana King'ori.
Karibu.
Yes.
Asante.